The game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker.
Looking at how he boldly voiced his opinions and then seeing how his government has run the country over the past 150 days, it becomes glaringly obvious that our Prime Minister is nothing but a hollow farce. The pressing question now is, how much more damage will he inflict on Britain in the next 150 days? The facts speak for themselves. Starmer doesn't understand Britain, and worse, he has no clue about its people. Let's recap the harm he has caused during this period of deceit and incompetence. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated on the latest in British politics. Farmers' protests have erupted, exposing a baffling paradox. While British farmers are being squeezed with a £520 million levy, the government generously allocates £560 million to foreign farmers under the banner of international aid. This move seems nothing short of pushing domestic workers into hardship to flaunt altruism abroad. At the Welsh Labour conference, when farmers arrived to voice their grievances, those once considered the party's right-hand men slipped out through the back door, like cowards evading accountability. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Rachel Reeves faces allegations of falsifying information on her LinkedIn profile. If proven, this could deliver a devastating blow to her credibility, potentially forcing her to relinquish her leadership role. The incident echoes the case of Louise Haigh, the former Transport Secretary, who resigned after it was revealed she concealed a fraud conviction tied to lying about a stolen mobile phone. What remains puzzling is that Keir Starmer, who endlessly proclaims his commitment to rooting out misconduct, appointed someone like Haigh. It seems Starmer's tough rhetoric is merely a facade, masking a leadership riddled with weaknesses and contradictions.
The game is up. You cannot be a lawmaker and a lawbreaker.
The string of irrational decisions continues as the current Prime Minister seems alarmingly eager to hand over a part of Britain's sovereign territory, almost serving it up to China on a platter. He's even rushing through the Chagos Islands agreement before Donald Trump has a chance to return to the White House. Meanwhile, Starmer cozies up to the current US President, Joe Biden, paving the way for the potential of World War III by approving the use of British-made missiles to attack Russia. Adding to this, he's openly supported assisted dying, despite the Labour MP who proposed the bill seemingly incapable of understanding its basic provisions. The absurdity doesn't stop there. Advertising cheese or junk food is now banned on London's tube, but promoting assisted dying is perfectly acceptable at train stations. It's hard to believe such nonsense is being normalised. Simultaneously, Labour's finances are in such dire straits that Starmer appears to have abandoned his promise to make Britain the fastest growing economy in the G7. Retail sales have plummeted to their worst levels since the pandemic, fueled by rising fears over economic instability. The irony is thick. Rachel Reeves, who now oversees the nation's finances, once worked in a complaints department. Perhaps that's where she prepared for the current economic chaos. It gets worse. A Muslim Labour MP has even proposed introducing a blasphemy law in Britain. Instead of outright rejecting the idea, Starmer appeared open to the possibility. More astonishingly, he suggested legalising something long outlawed, spiking people's drinks. These declarations are not only unnecessary but expose glaring contradictions in his political mindset. Elsewhere, other senior figures continue to stoke outrage. Liz Kendall, the Pensions Secretary tasked with supporting the elderly, resides in a £4 million mansion, with a salary exceeding £700,000 a year, supplemented by her banker husband's income. She still expects taxpayers to foot the energy bills for her second home. It's the epitome of champagne socialism. The farce deepens with Ed Miliband, an environmental fanatic, funneling tens of billions into overseas climate change projects. It doesn't take much imagination to foresee some of that money ending up in Taliban hands, raising questions about whether this is incompetence or simply reckless indifference. Another glaring paradox, the government spends £1 billion shutting down wind turbines on particularly windy days to prevent an oversupply from crashing the power grid. Truly commendable policy making. Meanwhile, Starmer is preparing to relaunch his government on Thursday with 5 key priorities. Unsurprisingly, immigration doesn't even make the list. From 2015 to 2022, Starmer voted 14 times against measures to tighten asylum laws. Today, another worrying revelation emerged. 20,000 illegal migrants have crossed the Channel since he became Prime Minister. Just 6 days ago, it was revealed that Labour's Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is planning to spend millions more on legal aid for asylum lawyers to address the backlog of cases. The consequences of these actions are as predictable as they are damaging. And of course, this ties neatly into the growing evidence of a care system riddled with inequality, a two-tier society, and the infuriating inertia of law enforcement. Pro-Palestinian protesters brazenly attempted to storm Downing Street, but the pressing question remains: will they face swift prosecution? The answer, unsurprisingly, is almost certainly no. Meanwhile, a petition has been launched, amassing a staggering 3 million signatures, calling for a fresh general election. In just a few short weeks, these unfolding events have raised serious concerns about the current political climate. The real question now is this: can Britain endure another 150 days under Starmer's leadership? A haunting thought that leaves many deeply unsettled.
Starmer has shown no ability to easily explain how he's going to get us out of this mess, how the country's going to get out of the mess. And it's true, he hasn't. He has no plan, he has no ideas. He's a dud Prime Minister, and this can only get worse.
The events of Keir Starmer's first 150 days in office have been so glaringly obvious that they leave no room for denial. Yet here he is, boldly announcing plans to reset the government this coming Thursday with a so-called reconstruction project, which he proclaims to be the most ambitious government plan of a generation. In reality, it is nothing more than the desperate floundering of an administration in disarray, fumbling to salvage its battered reputation. Starmer hails his initiative as a historic turning point, a reset following the supposed failures of the Conservatives. But it seems he fails to grasp the futility of his efforts. His promises are empty, devoid of substance, and wholly unconvincing. After 150 days of abject failure, the days ahead promise little more than a continuation of disaster after disaster. A Prime Minister who has stumbled from the outset cannot hope to fix anything. Perhaps the saddest truth is that the British public has already recognised this, and seems to have made up its mind that Keir Starmer is not the leader they want steering the nation. While he busies himself erecting political defences to protect his position, the people have realised that he lacks the capability to shoulder the weight of national responsibility. The inescapable truth is that he is unworthy of the prime ministerial office. Even pressing national concerns, such as the sovereignty of the Chagos Archipelago or the British Indian Ocean territories, seem to have entirely escaped Starmer's focus. These are not just matters of international dispute, but symbols of national security and sovereignty. The Chagos Islands, strongly supported by the United States for their strategic military significance, represent a crucial linchpin in British foreign policy. Yet, Starmer appears indifferent, choosing instead to immerse himself in trivial debates of little importance. Meanwhile, under Starmer's leadership, the British economy faces dire losses. Recent reports suggest the nation stands to lose £50 billion, along with 125,000 jobs. What infuriates the public even more is the Prime Minister's deceit, misleading the people about his competence and delivering a woefully inadequate budget that has disappointed farmers, businesses, and citizens across the board. This country cannot function under a leader who prioritises self-preservation and the interests of his inner circle over the welfare of the public. Looking at recent polls, it is abundantly clear that public discontent with Starmer is surging. His personal approval rating has plummeted to -38, reflecting unprecedented dissatisfaction. Since taking office, he has engaged in 61 consultations, yet the outcomes have been characterised by missteps, indecision, and an inability to address the nation's pressing concerns. A leader without a clear plan, who seems perpetually adrift, cannot be expected to guide a country effectively. Although Starmer has made lofty promises of a brighter future, reality paints a very different picture. His actions, such as returning the Elgin marbles or fixating on inconsequential matters, reveal a startling lack of vision. This becomes even clearer when he neglects urgent issues like immigration control in favour of impractical and irrelevant goals. These reckless decisions only underscore Starmer's inability to lead the nation out of its current crisis. Under his leadership, Britain faces not just a political misstep, but a genuine threat to its stability and prosperity. The public has already chosen a different path, having lost faith in both Starmer and the Labour Party. At this point, it's evident that the country deserves a leader of calibre, not someone who has left behind a trail of failure and chaos. The lives of ordinary Britons are bearing the brunt of the government's regrettable decisions, most notably Starmer's refusal to impose limits on immigration, even though he had every opportunity to do so. This has paved the way for an uncontrolled influx of migrants, with 20,000 arrivals this year alone, a figure that cannot be dismissed lightly. It speaks to the Prime Minister's failure to govern responsibly, as his policies not only fail to safeguard the public interest, but exacerbate the nation's existing challenges. This man, who once confidently claimed that Britain could halt banking transactions and take strong financial control, has built an image of grandeur entirely divorced from reality. He assumes people will believe his hollow promises. And if anyone thinks these statements will bring about meaningful change in the coming months, they will soon realise they have been thoroughly deceived. Starmer's proclamations are nothing more than empty slogans, lacking substance, grounded in fantasy, and utterly incapable of altering the grim trajectory the country currently faces. Behind those resounding declarations lies a bitter irony, brazen deceit, unabashedly displayed before the public. The British people, already disillusioned with politicians, now have even more reason to doubt Starmer's leadership. His misguided decisions have not only weakened the economy, but have also strained the relationship between the government and the public, as his promises increasingly appear to be nothing more than hollow theatrics. The undeniable truth is that the British economy is suffering significant damage. Bond interest rates are now substantially higher than during the tenure of his predecessor Liz Truss. This not only paints a grim picture for the economy, but also leaves the public feeling anxious, realising that the government is doing little to stabilise the situation. The swift decline in economic confidence has eroded trust in the administration, which seems devoid of a clear strategy to address the crisis. While the economy teeters on the brink of recession, Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, busies himself with trivial matters like repatriating the Elgin marbles or ceding sovereignty over the Chagos archipelago. Such issues do nothing to benefit the nation at this critical juncture. His actions have led people to question the government's priorities, as pressing concerns like immigration control and economic reform are sidelined. If Starmer genuinely believes these issues take precedence over the urgent challenges facing the country, he is gravely mistaken. The situation surrounding the Chagos archipelago has only grown more contentious. Recently, Nigel Farage, leader of the Reform UK party, has called for a referendum to let the people decide the archipelago's future. Farage has harshly criticised the agreement proposed by Sir Keir Starmer, labelling it a rotten deal that not only undermines British sovereignty, but also neglects the rights of the Chagosian people, who should have the autonomy to determine their own future. He did not shy away from denouncing the government for prioritising a detrimental agreement over the legitimate interests of the Chagos inhabitants and the nation's security. The backlash has been amplified by concerns from officials within Donald Trump's administration, particularly among Republicans, who have voiced unease over the agreement. They argue that ceding the Chagos archipelago to Mauritius is a serious mistake, one that fails to secure the long-term interests of the UK. Farage has further criticised the deal, likening it to China's broken promises on Hong Kong. He contends that this is yet another poorly considered decision by the British government, one made without sufficient foresight. In defence of the government's position, Defence Minister Luke Pollard has argued that the agreement enjoys robust US support and safeguards the security of the joint military base at Diego Garcia. Pollard asserts that security measures will be implemented to prevent external powers, particularly China, from encroaching on the region. However, Farage strongly rebuts this, asserting that reliance on the US is a flawed strategy, especially given that Joe Biden's administration may not uphold the agreement in the long run. Farage insists that this deal is unreliable, and only short-sighted politicians would believe it could endure. Farage has also questioned why the UK government, if truly concerned about people's rights, refuses to hold a referendum for the Chagosian people to decide their future. If a referendum was granted to the Falkland Islanders, why deny the Chagos population the same right? This only highlights the government's lack of transparency and respect for the self-determination of its territory's inhabitants. In contrast, Pollard has dismissed the notion of destabilising the Falklands' future as pointless, reaffirming that the Falkland Islands will remain British as long as its people desire that relationship. Pollard has emphasised that the agreement not only protects the Diego Garcia military base, but also ensures regional stability and security for the next century. The British government has pledged to maintain strict security measures to safeguard the base and to prevent any foreign powers from compromising its safety or operations. These statements, however, have only deepened public concern about the sustainability of the government's decisions, exposing the growing chasm between political rhetoric and meaningful action. This disparity has further underscored the inconsistencies and lack of coherence in the leadership's approach to critical issues.